Hello and welcome back to another episode of Viper Bytes, the show where we talk about top 10 lists, training camp battles, you name it, we got it. And today we're going to continue with that training camp battle theme. We're going to head out west to the AFC West this time. We're going to talk about some of these camp battles that you're going to want to pay attention to as we head into 2021. Training camp's just a few short days away. I think we're about 10 days away right now, so you want to make sure to listen closely and to see what we have to say and how we're talking about these battles and how they pertain to your fantasy football rosters and how they factor into their National Football League teams right now. First off, we're going to head out to Denver. We're going to talk a little bit about the Denver Broncos.
This is where everything happens quicker and you have to make sure everyone has their assignments down.
Here's Locke. 3 white jerseys in his face. There is a flag down. Noah Fant came up with it. Signal is touchdown. We will check the marker.
Melvin Gordon in the backfield along with Locke on first down. Locke is going to throw far side of the field. A little back shoulder action, and it is complete.
Twice.
There are several battles going on in Denver here right now that you're going to want to pay close attention to. We'll break them down, but the first one everyone wants to talk about is Drew Lock versus Teddy Bridgewater. Now, like Captain America in Civil War, you're either Team Iron Man or Team Captain America here. And, well, right now it's very similar going on in the Mile High City right now with Team Teddy and Team Drew Lock. How it's going to break down now, let's be honest here. The truth is both quarterbacks are pretty much a liability for the Broncos, so even through competition might be entertaining. The result, not so much. But let's take a little deeper look in here. Lock versus Bridgewater. Bridgewater last year, the Carolina Panthers had an opportunity to tie or win the game 5 separate occasions on the last drive and failed to do so in each and every one of those games. Say what you will about Drew Lock and his inaccuracy and not being able to hit the side of a mountain if he threw it. Uncle Rico's not there to help him, but, you know, Drew Lock, he's had a problem with that accuracy throughout his career. And if we look at the touchdown percentage, Drew Lock actually has a slight edge over Teddy Bridgewater. Drew Lock's touchdown percentage was 3.9%, whereas Teddy Bridgewater came in about 3.2. Just put a little, give you a little bit of window dressing there, a little bit of comparison here. Aaron Rodgers was a league high 9.4%, where the average between a good quarterback to above average quarterback was 5.7 to 7.5. Clearly, both quarterbacks fall short of that metric. Now, with Bridgewater, he had 15 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, but was sacked 31 times last year. And Drew Lock came across with a 16 to 15 touchdown to interception ratio, but was only sacked 18 occasions. Why is this important? Because the Broncos have a Super Bowl contending roster on both sides of the ball. We'll talk a little bit more about their offense a little bit later. This defense is as good as any, and Von Miller is coming back this year. Now, how this is going to shape up, expect a 50-50 split throughout the whole training camp. Expect preseason games to be split pretty much evenly down the middle, with likely Fangio not naming a starter until week 1. And even then, I think you're not going to have a clear-cut number 1 starter until we actually get into the games. Now, what I'm hearing in Denver right now is Teddy Bridgewater has the inside track. I still believe Drew Lock will be that quarterback going into 2021. I like his upside a little bit more. I know what I'm getting with Teddy. Maybe with Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and whoever that third wide receiver, which we'll talk about shortly, is maybe Drew Lock can find a little bit of consistency in that accuracy and make a difference going forward. Now, talking about some running backs here, because we got another battle here between incumbent Melvin Gordon and recently drafted Javonte Williams of the University of North Carolina. Javonte Williams had a very successful career there, playing a 1A, 1B type role with Michael Carter, which I think he can do right off the get-go with Melvin Gordon. Maybe not a clear number 1 in Javonte Williams, and I think that's okay because he will be able to have some standalone value. Where is he going to get that value? Well, Philip Lindsay, who was released, had 118 carries last year. And I think you can expect Javonte Williams to see a very similar role as far as touches go in that realm. Now, Melvin Gordon, he had 215 carries last year and ran the ball for 986 yards and 9 touchdowns. If the Broncos believe that they have a Super Bowl roster like many people do, expect them to run the ball heavily with Melvin Gordon, run the wheels right off of him, and see where that takes him. But you got to remember, there's draft capital on Javonte Williams' side. They're going to want to get him in as soon as possible, see what they got in him. They used a second-round pick to bring him into their organization. But the way I see this shaping out, it's going to be Melvin Gordon's backfield early, and you're probably going to see him get a good 66% of the touches out of the backfield for the Broncos. Speaking of touchdowns, touches, targets, let's move to the wide receiver position. Last year, Courtland Sutton suffered an ACL injury in game 1. Now, that really kind of set the tone for the entire season for the Broncos as far as their offense was concerned. Tim Patrick came in, played admirably, 51 receptions, 742 yards, 6 touchdowns. Jerry Jeudy, 52 receptions, 856 yards, 3 touchdowns. But here's the thing. He had 16.5 yards per reception on 113 targets. That is insane. Now, this is more of probably a knock on Drew Lock's accuracy to have 113 targets and only 52 receptions, but there were some drops in Judy's camp last year as well. So let's not totally give Judy slide him off without any fault of his own. Now, Deshaun Hamilton is a Drew Lock favorite, and if Drew Lock wins this competition, we could see Hamilton pressing Tim Patrick for that wide receiver 3 role. Last year, 23 receptions, 293 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And KJ Hamler also had 30 receptions for 381 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, we know if Courtland Sutton's healthy, he is the wide receiver 1, with Jerry Jeudy as a solid 1B to 2. Now, where it's going to get interesting is Tim Patrick. Is he going to be the clear-cut number 3, or will Hamilton and Hamler press him? I think this year it's going to be Tim Patrick. He's going to be the guy. And I hate to say it, but I think KJ Hamler is going to be that wide receiver that steps into that 4 role with Deshaun Hamilton sliding into number 5, just to keep an eye on there. Now, the next stop on our little trip here in the AFC West is going to be to Los Angeles, where we're going to talk a little bit about the Los Angeles Chargers.
Touchdown at the 3. First and goal. Herbert still has it. Herbert's going to take it in for the touchdown. Welcome to the NFL. It's a 3rd and goal. End zone bound. Perfect pass. Touchdown, Chargers.
The Chargers are a very interesting team going into 2021. In fact, this whole AFC West is kind of interesting in how it's going to shape out. We've seen the Raiders beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs are probably considered the strongest team in this division. The Broncos have a roster that can contend, and we know what the Chargers can do there with Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and so on and so forth. But who is going to step up as that wide receiver 3 for the Chargers? Are we going to see more Tyron Johnson? Are we going to see more Jalen Guyton? Are we going to see maybe one of the rookies from last year, KJ Hill, Joe Reed, or the newest drafted member of the team, and Josh Palmer, step up and fill that role? Now, when we look back on 2020, Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton filled in admirably when Keenan Allen went down, forced Justin Herbert to spread the ball out. Actually, Herbert had a lot more success in the passing game after Allen went down because he wasn't forcing every pass into him, which is something I think he's learned and he's going to grow. And I think that's going to give some value to a 3rd option. We know Mike Williams has got that 2nd spot locked down. He's under contract. This is a contract year for him. So you know he's going to want to ball out and get that big payday at the end of the season. Keenan Allen, Mr. Consistency, one of the best PPR receivers. Put some respect on his name because he's definitely being undervalued as far as wide receivers go in the National Football League. One of the best pure route runners there is. Now, Tyron Johnson had a 19.9 yards per reception last year on 20 catches. That added up to 398 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jalen Guyton, 28 receptions, 511 yards, that 18.3 yards per reception, 3 touchdowns. Both Guyton and Johnson were deep ball threats on the field. They were the guys that the Chargers were using to stretch the field out. Now, we could talk about Hunter Henry. He kind of vacated 60 receptions. That was 93 targets that are up for grabs this year. We could probably spread that out. I think you're really looking at maybe 20 receptions for Johnson, 20 for Guyton, and then probably Josh Palmer coming in for 20. Don't think there's going to be a clear number 3 option for the Chargers, is my guess right now. Austin Eckler is probably going to absorb a lot of those targets that Hunter Henry is vacating, and then some of those will be sprinkling out to the tight end position. Now, the thing I like about Palmer going forward is he was a 3rd option at Tennessee. He played behind Marquez Callaway. He played behind Jawan Jennings. What Palmer brings that the other two don't is a great blend of size, athleticism, and ball skills, kind of filling more of a role of what Mike Williams had if Mike Williams decides to move on in the offseason via free agency. Now we talk about Hunter Henry. Let's move on to the tight end position. We know Hunter Henry has moved on to greener pastures. He got that big payday to go to New England to play with the Patriots. So who fills in? Well, the Chargers have a couple guys already in place there, in Donald Parham and Steven Johnson. Those guys are both there. They brought in Trey McKitty via the draft, free agency kind of thing. And then Jared Cook, he's an oldie, but he's a goodie. He's coming over from the New Orleans Saints and applying the trade to be the security blanket for Justin Herbert. Now, last year, Parham only had 10 receptions, 159 yards, but he did have those 3 touchdowns. And Steven Johnson there had 8 receptions for 106 yards. Jared Cook with the Saints last year, and this was an interesting year for the Saints because Drew Brees played a little bit. Taysom Hill came in. Not a lot of consistency within that passing offense there for the New Orleans Saints of what they're accustomed to, but he was still able to haul in 37 receptions for 504 yards and 7 touchdowns with a 13.6 yards per reception, showing that there is some value in Jared Cook. Now, I really think that Jared Cook is going to be the guy kind of be in between the 20s, as we use a running back terminology here. Expect Cook to do that, stretch the seams a little bit. But Donald Parham is going to be that guy in the end zone that I think you're going to see a lot of, where he can post up in the back of the end zone, use that 6'8" frame and that monster wingspan to bring in some passes. Trey McKitty is more of that, was drafted in the 3rd round, more of a blocking type tight end. So I don't think you're going to see him in passing situations, well, at least running the routes in passing situations. He'll be in on 3rd down and blocking. But for me right now, Jared Cook's the guy there. I think he'll be the primary pass-catching tight end, and that's going to give that Justin Herbert a little bit of comfort there to go along with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Now, the next stop on our little tour in the AFC West, we're going to head to Vegas. We like to gamble. Let's play a little bit of some wide receiver roulette.
Carr with time, throwing wide open over the middle. It is caught. That is Henry Ruggs, the 3rd, and he's bounced out of bounds.
That takes time. It just takes reps. And they haven't had that this offseason, but Carr looks very comfortable with Henry Ruggs.
Believe that they can win multiple Super Bowls and go on a run. 3rd and 10. Carr, step, deep ball, upstairs. Oh, it's Henry Ruggs.
We all know in Vegas, the offense goes through Darren Waller, underneath, over the top, no matter how you want to look at it. 107 receptions, nearly 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns last year for the Raiders. That's not going to change, regardless of who the wide receivers are. Now, there is a path for someone in the Raiders organization to step up and be a wide receiver 1 on this team based on the amount of receptions that Nelson Aguilar had last year. Those 48 for nearly 900 yards, 8 touchdowns, 18.7 yards per reception. Now, let's take a look at who they have at the wide receivers. They got Henry Ruggs, John Smokey Brown, Brian Edwards, Hunter Renfrow, Zay Jones, Willie Snead. There's a whole lot there that have done a whole lot of nothing as well in the last couple seasons. The prime candidate to be the wide receiver 1 for the Raiders is probably Henry Ruggs. There are very key to targets. There is an opportunity for him to get it loose in the backfield. If Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller can continue to work the underneath, that gives an opportunity for a guy like Henry Ruggs that has a little bit of speed and can run some patterns and is a pretty good route runner in his own mind, not what we give him credit for, to expose the secondaries of the AFC West especially. But let's take a look at this. Ruggs, 26 receptions, 452 yards, 2 touchdowns, 17.4. Brian Edwards in 12 games only had 11 receptions for 193 yards. John Brown in 9 games with the Buffalo Bills last season, 33 receptions, 458 yards, and only 3 touchdowns. So this is going to be very interesting on how this is going to all shake down. I think Ruggs is going to be the guy taking that next step. John Brown is going to get it mixed in there. I want to see Brian Edwards out of South Carolina. He had a great college dominator, breakout age there. So Black 11, if we're playing roulette, let's put some money on Black 11. Now, on the backside of this, you got Zay Jones and Willie Snead. One of these guys will not make the roster. And I have a feeling it's going to be Willie Snead here because I think they really believe in Zay Jones. I think Zay Jones is going to come in. He's going to fill in as a wide receiver 5 for the Raiders, and that's going to be setting it. So I think you're with the Raiders, you're looking at Ruggs, Brown, Edwards, Renfro, Zay Jones, Darren Waller, and you know they're going to keep about 3 or 4 tight ends because that's what they like to do. They're kind of like the Chicago Bears, but of the desert. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the Drake and Jacobs dynamic here. Last year, Josh Jacobs ran for 1,065 yards. He also chipped in with 12 touchdowns. He had 273 carries. That's the third most in the National Football League. Now, flipping over to his counterpart in Arizona, Kenyon Drake had 239 carries, 955 yards, and 10 touchdowns. How is this workload going to be divided between the two? A lot of people believe that Kenyon Drake's going to come in, play more of a slot-type receiver role, but the truth of the matter is he only had 25 receptions last year and 137 yards, where Josh Jacobs actually had 33 receptions and 238 yards. Will Jalen Richard factor in on passing downs? I don't know if he can with Kenyon Drake already in place. That's where it's going to get interesting. I think you can expect Jacobs to kind of clock in at about that 240 rushing attempts next year. I think that's definitely plausible. I think they're going to want to use the run game to set up the pass game and use the tight ends in the short screen game with Darren Waller to kind of be an extension of that run game before they take those big shots for Henry Ruggs down the field and John Brown down the field, much like they did with Nelson Aguilar last year based on his 18.7 yards per reception. Now, how do you do this? How do you get that run game going? Your line has to be intact. And we're going to talk about Kansas City's line because they have a very similar situation, but there was a lot of turnover for the Vegas Raiders last year. Out goes Rodney Hudson. Out goes Gabe Jackson. Out goes Trent Brown. That's over half their offensive line replaced. How are they replacing these guys? Well, they've got Denzel Good. He's coming back. Nick Martin's an option there. Alex Leatherwood. These are all guys that are looking to fill the void. Good. He's played both sides for the Raiders. He's got that experience. He's got that swing ability to play right guard, left guard, wherever you want to put him. He can play that position. He's played a guard a majority of his career. Alex Leatherwood, they drafted him to probably be their right tackle. He's probably more comfortable at right guard. He's probably going to start at guard before they move him to tackle. And then Nick Martin out of Houston plays a little center. We'll see how that shapes out for him. They got Andre James. They paid Andre James big money to be after that Hudson go. They paid James that big contract. Nick Martin's probably more of a backup at this point. And that kind of breaks down the Raiders other than one key position battle. We know there's going to be 3 linebackers. The 4th linebacker is up for grabs here because they've got Devin Diablo, Javon White, Tanner Muse, all there battling for that 4th linebacker position. And here's the best part about it all. They're all that hybrid linebacker safety kind of guys. So it's going to be interesting to see how that battle shakes out as well. And finally, we can't go anywhere without going to the Super Bowl runners-up. We're going to head to Kansas City next.
Time, and they've got another one-on-one for Robinson, and he makes the catch. What an effort! Incredible performance by DeMarcus Robinson.
Bobby screen. I'm going in. Nope. Going over the top, and he gets that half a step. And Robinson, being the big guy he is.
The biggest question in Kansas City is, how do you replace Sammy Watkins? Okay, I kept a straight face. You got to give me credit there. The answer is never Sammy Watkins, ever. Sammy Watkins is leaving 37 receptions, 421 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the table. He had 55 targets in those 10 games that he played. That production won't be hard to pick up. But who's going to get those targets? We know Travis Kelce is going to get his. We know Tyreek Hill is going to get his. Will DeMarcus Robinson pick that up? As seen in the video, big-time player. He can make some plays. Or will it be Mecole Hardman, or will it be Brian Pringle? Well, let's take a little bit deeper look at these guys. DeMarcus Robinson last year had a career year. 45 receptions, 466 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He has never surpassed 45 receptions or 466 yards at any point in his career. And this is now entering his 6th season of the University of Florida. Mecole Hardman, 41 receptions on 62 targets, 560 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He's already surpassed 500 receiving yards, and he's always going to be that big play threat opposite of Tyreek Hill. They want to put burners on the outside, opens up that underbelly for Travis Kelce to have the most success. Right now, the clear path to the number 2 spot there is Mecole Hardman. Let's not forget about Brian Pringle. He's going to factor in here. And here's the thing. How do you replace a Tiger? Draft a Tiger. Let's not forget about Cornell Powell, getting drafted by the Chiefs last year out of the University of Clemson. He's going to factor in somewhere along the way. I like what he can bring to the table. He's a guy to keep an eye on. Now, I mentioned Kansas City is in a very similar situation as the Raiders. based on that offensive line. Let's take a look at what this offensive line looks. It's been completely rebuilt. Out Eric Fisher, out Mitchell Schwartz. These guys are both gone. They brought in Orlando Brown through trade from Baltimore Ravens. They brought in Joe Thuney out of the New England Patriots. They brought Kyle Long out of retirement to come, and maybe they'll get lucky and Laurent Tardif Devaney, he'll come back from his COVID opt-out clause there, where he was doing some medical stuff in Montreal there, Canada there during the offseason or during the season last year, however you want to look at it. Now, the battle here that's going to be interesting to watch is at that right tackle position where it's coming down to Mike Remmers and Lucas Nine. Now, why is this interesting? Well, it's interesting because during the Super Bowl, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers pass rush absolutely destroyed Mike Remmers. Without a question, put Patrick Mahomes in the back pedal. He was running for his life, couldn't get his feet set, couldn't step forward. Patrick Mahomes, as good as he is, he still needs time to pass the ball. And I'm not too sure if Remmers is the solution there long term. He may get the early spot because, in my opinion, Lucas Nine is the guy who's going to replace him at the right tackle spot. But here's the problem. Nang opted out of his rookie season last year. He was a draft pick out of TCU, where he had a little bit of game time against Chase Young, in which he held his own in that period. So for me, if you want to make sure that passing game gets going, if you want to hit those deep balls to Tyreek Hill, to Mecole Hardman, you're going to want to make sure that right side is well protected, because there are some pass rushers in that AFC West. We talk about the Boses. We talk about Max Crosby. We talk about Yannick Ngakoue. And, of course, we got the pass rushing ability of the Denver Broncos with Von Miller. So you got to make sure that the right side is solidified so Patrick Mahomes has that time to be successful. Thank you for joining us again. This has been Viper Bytes, AFC West edition. You want to make sure to take a look at some of our other videos, our other podcasts there. We've already broken down the AFC East, the AFC North. And then after this, we're going to head to the AFC South before we move over to the NFC. So, again, thank you, and we'll see you soon.